Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, host of the iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. But once again, I'm not talking about that. This time, I'm again talking about saving money with a netbook. Remember, a netbook is an inexpensive computer that may serve your needs as a computer, either traveling or if you have very simple needs at home. And today we're going to talk about the Dell Mini Inspiron 9. This was Dell's first entry into the netbook computer arena, and it's a very nice, sleek, attractive package. As you can see, it's smaller than some of the other netbooks that are out there. It's not very thick, and it's really very, very lightweight. Let's take a look at the outside of it. You can get a variety of different colors if you choose to do that, some at additional cost. This particular computer has a 4-cell battery, so it's a little bit bigger than the typical 3-cell battery. It's going to run for about, maybe 3.5 hours or so. So you get a little more battery use out of it. It also has an easily accessible panel here. If you want to upgrade your memory, I'm thinking, I've never done that. This has a gigabyte of memory in here, so that was adequate for me, and a full complement of ports. So really you have all the ports that you would need for typical functions. So you have your locking port, your power port, 2 USB ports, an SD card reader here, which is always nice to have for additional storage, or just as an SD card reader. This gives you both the headphone and the microphone jack. Remember, the Mini 1000 had a combination jack, which was awkward. And it also gives you a third USB port. And boy, you can never have too many USB ports. It gives you a VGA port, so you can use this for presentations without using some sort of adapter or dongle or that sort of thing. And of course, there's a little Ethernet port back here. The front has a little light, but not a lot else on the front. When you open it up, you have a nice complement of functions too. Up here is a 1.3 megapixel camera, which works reasonably well. It also comes with the Dell communication software, which I have not used, but I've read is pretty good. So it has that. And let me get rid of this here so we can get rid of that so you can see the display. The display is nice and clear. I think it's about 8.9 inches, which is actually plenty. You can see a whole web page, and it's very sharp. You also have 2 speakers down here below the deck, or below the screen right here. These speakers are very adequate. They're a little on the tinny side, but you do have some decent volume from them. I would say they're not as good as, for instance, like the HP Mini 1000, but they certainly do the job, and they would serve you fine. And really, if you had to listen to something more critically, you could always use earbuds or external speakers. What Dell decided to do is really try to maximize the keyboard portion of the computer. They give you a reasonably good sized mouse pad for such a small computer, and the buttons are positioned below, which a lot of people prefer. They also tried to really maximize the size of the keys, and this was both a success and a failure. And by that I mean they definitely did maximize the keys. You can absolutely touch type on this keyboard. I've done it, but the problem is they've had to move keys, some of them in very awkward positions. So your shift key is this little tiny key over here. My personal dislike is putting the apostrophe key down here instead of over here. They've moved some other keys too. And when I find that as a touch typist, when I'm typing, I'm constantly hitting the wrong key when I'm going for an apostrophe or something, and I have to constantly go back and correct it. And that, for me, is sort of a deal breaker. This would be less of a problem if you were a hunt and peck typist, but for someone like me, it's kind of a no-go. Otherwise, I think they did things very well with this computer, coming up with a package that performs reasonably well, about similar to other netbooks that are out there. Here again, if you get a bigger hard drive, that's great, but with that 16 gigabytes, you definitely have enough hard drive to load a bunch of programs. I have Skype on here, iTunes, Rhapsody, a couple of different browsers, an Office suite, and all that fits on there just fine. I could probably put a few TV shows on here, or some music if I chose to, or some other small programs like a simple photo editor, for instance, would fit just fine too. So you have to be a little careful. You can't be just cavalier about what you're putting on your computer, but at the same time, you certainly get more than just a tiny amount of hard drive space. So let's see if we can then take a look at how the browser performs. Okay, here we are on just a simple home page. I You have Google, and this is in Firefox. Let's go to a different web page. And I'm very clumsy with my mouse, so let's see what we can find here. Alright, I just went to, you didn't see that quickly, but I just went very quickly to the Badger and Blade. By the way, this is a web page that looks at wet shaving, traditional wet shaving. If you're trying to save money, there's nothing cheaper than doing this, so you might want to consider that. But this page has a lot of text and graphics in it. It loaded very quickly and functions very well. If I get out of the web browser, and get out of this page too, and just go into my Start menu, you can see that if I load my computer up, again, pretty quick response. If I highlight my C drive, again, pretty quick response. I go to Programs, pretty quick response. So I know it's hard for you guys to see that with this particular webcam setup, but it was very quick, almost like a notebook. Remember, these are not notebooks. They don't have optical drives. They have single core processors, but you know, for most people they might just do the job fine, because if you talk to most folks that are using a computer, they're not really running a lot of games or doing very complicated video editing on them. They're doing simple stuff. So when I consider this computer, I think it has all the components except for one big problem, and that's for the touch typist. That keyboard is just a little bit too off for me. That would be the deal breaker as far as I'm concerned. If you are a hunt and peck typist and you can get one of these inexpensively, I'd say go do it. By the way, this particular computer, configured as it is a little bit over $400. Reasonable price, I think.